I'm with the St. Columban Society in our retirement home here in Navan, just outside Dublin. And on the occasion of 700 years of Dante's death, it's really not for, I think it's more than Irish people wanting to congratulate Italians for having produced such a wonderful man and also a wonderful work in the Divine Comedy. It's also for us to celebrate it, because many of us are only now realizing that we have been formed, our mental attitude has been influenced by Dante himself. So we are actually celebrating our own DNA, spiritual DNA, because of Dante. The pandemic, of course, has had a huge impact on us. Now, one of them is a good one. Because we have had a lot of time, many people decided that they were going to read books that they always intended to read but didn't do it. And I had decided that I was going to read the Divine Comedy for the first time. I know the story, but I always knew the story, but to read it from beginning to end in English. And when the other members of our community here heard that I had done this, they said, well, we've always wanted to read it. Can you tell us something more about it? When I looked up the internet here with just Dante, the first things to come up are Dante pizzas, the local Dante pizza shop. So even though we know Dante, we don't know in detail precisely what he did and why he is so important. More recently, Pope Francis has emphasized the importance of Dante and Dante's message, and the Divine Comedy's message in particular. And the opening lines of the Divine Comedy are very suitable for somebody who's going through a middle-age crisis. In other words, I think for people who are very young, they get very little out of the Divine Comedy, but if they have already passed once or twice the middle-age crisis, then they will be more seriously able to engage and get something from it. Pope Francis himself emphasizes that many of us would begin to lose our way through life and ask, is this all there is? Or we need to take a path of conversion. So these are elements in the story. And that's suitable for Easter, because the whole context of the Divine Comedy is set around Good Friday to Easter. Pope Francis, for us also, had the message that Dante is a prophet of hope, especially when there are huge topics surrounding us in the world, the pandemic being one, but the destruction of the environment being another. So anybody who's interested in those topics can actually get something very important from the Divine Comedy. There's no need for me to explain one of the most exciting features, namely the rhyming system of the Divine Comedy, the terza rima. But nevertheless, even in English, for me reading it in English, I'm just so impressed that he could write such a long poem with such deep content and have it all rhyming A, B, A, C, D, C, and so on to the very end. And when the members here heard this, they were also very impressed by that. You also know that there are certain very famous Irish authors, James Joyce being one, and William Butler Yeats, the poet, being another. And they said something very significant about the Divine Comedy and about Dante. I'll quote it briefly. James Joyce said, "I love my Dante as much as the Bible. He is my spiritual food." And William Butler Yeats said, "Dante is the chief imagination of Christendom." In other words, whether we learn theology or not, our imagination of what the cosmology or the cosmography from purgatory, or from hell to purgatory to limbo and then into heaven. What we imagine this in our minds when we think about it is all due to Dante and Dante's Divine Comedy. So we, even those of in Ireland who have never read it, know something about it, but were formed by Dante's description of these wonderful things. Personally, what I also like to emphasize, or de-emphasize for our members, as missionaries who've worked in Korea for myself and other places, Derry in South America, the idea of exile is extremely important, and it's crucially important in Dante's life. It was extremely painful to the extent that he never went back home to Florence, Firenze. But also he was able, by incorporating his insights into Greek tragedy, into the poem, he was able to realize that very often wisdom only comes through suffering. So it was in the process of suffering that he stopped, slowed down, and began to piece together the path, or the pilgrimage, or the journey that we are all on. And maybe I would leave it with one other thing that appeals to me, and I think we in Ireland and other countries, and including Italy, can learn from reading the Divine Comedy, is that we would call nowadays Dante a public intellectual, in the sense that he's not just a poet who can write nice rhymes. He is also a theologian. He is also a philosopher. He knew all about the Greek philosophy, and Virgil, of course, plays a big, important role, and politics. He was involved in, as everybody you know, but also our own members didn't really know, he was involved as a politician in the conflict between the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire. So, but nowadays, he's asking us, I think, in his message, to be able to correlate the message of theology and the Bible with the current politics, and not to dismiss Dante's own sense of spirituality and theology, so that they're just frivolous sideline issues. He wants them to be part of the engagement with politics as well as with art. And so that is the message that we in our small group here in Ireland picked up from rereading or thinking again about the importance of the Divine Comedy, not just 700 years ago, but right until now. Thank you very much.
It's important to talk about Dante also for today. It's not something in the past, related to the past, but it matters today. To talk to us about Dante today, Giada is asking why from Ireland you are connecting with us and talking about Dante. Is it important, Dante? It's so important?
The main reason, not specifically today, even though today is an important day, it started maybe 1 week ago when members of the community heard that I had read Divine Comedy for the first time. They wanted to know exactly what is its importance. So I began to prepare to talk just to them and explaining why he is so important, not just for us, but we are missionaries and we've been on exile. So maybe there is something special there for us to learn. And then the part I emphasized, the relationship between religion and politics is, you cannot leave out religion or theology completely out of public discussion. So he is a public intellectual, and we need more in our public life. We need more public intellectuals, not just pious people on one side and secular, totally secular people on the other who like to have them meet together.
What change inside a person that live part of his life far from his own land? like for you, that you have been a missionary and you have spent some years abroad and far from your home. What changed inside you when you come back? So at the end of a journey, we are not the same as the people who left. What changed inside you? So I will see if the answers are the same that have been given by students here.
And the change, of course, is to broaden your own mind, but also in modern times, we have to try to figure out the distance or the difference between exile or pilgrim on one side and tourist on the other side, because to go abroad as a tourist, you don't really broaden your mind necessarily. You just bring your own mind with you and you try to impose it on the place or expectations of what you want to receive from the host tourist country. Whereas with a sense of a real exile, it must begin with some form of pain, because nobody likes to change their, or even to broaden their mind without being pushed to do it. So exile and missionary, you are pushed. You cannot impose your own viewpoints and without listening to others.
Ok, ragazzi,